Good morning, this is Liquid Quick. I'm starting a Pauper video playing the first round of the PappyPauper Challenge, playing against stsung. We are playing Affinity, and we don't know what he is on yet, but we're going to find out. We have the option to play first, so we're going to. This hand is mediocre, but keepable. We do get to play a turn to Frogmite. Prophetic Prism lets us dig, and we have all our colors. So while it's not super explosive, it does have the potential to get us there. We're going to lead with Great Furnace and play a Flare Husk. I don't think which land we lead with matters too much. Ultimately, I think that the only possibility would be something like Seed of the Cyanide being able to play a turn 2 Gear Seeker Serpent, but since we don't have a Springleaf Drum, it's not possible to do so. Great, so we'll play our Prophetic Prism. It looks like he's on blue-black control, which is generally a positive matchup for us, but we do need to draw our threats in kind of a reasonable amount of time. And we'll kind of see where we go over the next couple turns. Very likely to have something like Counterspell here. He may not counter a Frogmite anyways, so it's likely we can just lead with that and have it resolve, and we'll play our Springleaf Drum. That's actually fine. Him not having something like Echoing Decay is pretty good for us, and we're on to the next turn. It's always an interesting decision whether to disfigure like he did there, or to wait until end of turn if you have Counterspell. It means it's less likely he has a Counterspell here, given that he did choose to disfigure during combat. So let's go to attacks again, and hopefully we'll be able to resolve our Mirror Enforcer here. Okay, so he does counter that, which is too bad. He is stuck on 2 lands. We did not play our 4th land. I don't think it's incredibly important to play it. We'll have some, like, it's unlikely we're going to get into a situation where we want that much mana. So we do now have 8 points of burn, which is good. It kind of puts us in a range where we can start to kind of count how far we actually have to get him, and it's a little bit closer. Looks like, what do we have here? He does have Echoing Decay now, so we are left with just a 1/1 on the board, and no other. I'm not going to play the Darksteel Citadel. They do play. They often play Probe, and Probe can make us discard 2 cards. We don't really want to just jam out our Galvanic Blasts yet. Opponent casts Preordain, and that's fine. Let's see what he does with those. What we need pretty badly is a Thought Cast. That's going to give us a chance to get ahead on cards in a way that can be proactive, going 1-for-1 with him when he's got more cards than us in hand. He tops and casts another Preordain. Very likely there's a land on top. Very likely he put land plus Preordain on top. And it's choosing to Preordain again. Yeah, and so I would expect to see a land here, which we do. So again, the math changes a little bit because we are only trying to get him to 8. Once we get to 8, it's likely we can win the game. Perilous Research is a great draw here. We'll attack. We are going to play the Darksteel Citadel now because we want to sacrifice it. And we'll sacrifice. And we'll play a Forger. No guarantee that it resolves, but likely to resolve here. Yeah. And we'll see what our opponent does. They often play 1 to 2 Doomblades main board, so it's reasonably likely he has not found one, especially since he was digging for land. But we'll see what he has here. But I just figure, so likely he's got an edict effect on this turn, which would be unfortunate for us. I mean, it's pretty clear that's what he has. Or a Gurmag Angler. Okay, so he does have Angler here. Question is, does that change what we want to do with our Galvanic Blast? It might. We do have another Perilous Research. I think we're going to start with a Perilous Research here. We don't have to choose what we sacrifice with Perilous Research until we draw, so we can decide whether we want to sacrifice Prophetic Prism or land, or Springleaf Drum actually, which might be the choice. We'll see what we have here. I'm going to get rid of the Springleaf Drum. I don't think it's something we're likely going to use. We do have more lands coming, so we will sacrifice the Springleaf Drum. We are going to play Thoughtcast. And this is the way that we get ourselves back into the game, by being able to draw enough cards to actively affect the board. And we are not going to obviously do any attacking. At some point we have to decide whether we want to double blast the Gurmag Angler to start getting in for attacks, or whether we're interested in just double Gurmagging his face at some point. He's going to be playing Muldrifter here. Oh, he is playing Probe, okay. Which ends up working out okay for us since we have 2 lands to discard. Which we will happily discard here. We'll see what he discards, because that should help give a flavor on what else is in his hand. If he's discarding lands, he's probably feeling like he's got enough. If he discards spells, so he did discard Forbidden Alchemy and a Swamp, so likely he's feeling like he's got enough lands, but probably doesn't have more lands in hand. Maybe has 1. Forbidden Alchemy is kind of a fine one to discard. We'll discard both of our lands because we would rather have our spells. He's attacking here, getting aggressive. And we'll see what we draw. Another Drum. We are going to equip. And we'll also get in for 5 here. And he's now within 1 hit of double blast winning the game, which would be ideal. We'll see what he draws here. If he goes for an attack, gives us the possibility of winning. We'll see what he says. Yeah, he does decide to serve here. No plays, representing a counterspell of some kind. It's for Frogmite. And we will go to attacks. Let's play our Frogmite. Him countering this makes me really likely to try to double blast him here. It's unlikely he's got a way to stop 2 Galvanic Blasts. So we'll see what the result of his tapping 2 blue mana is. Does cast Deprive here. I think now is the right time to try to double Galvanic Blast him. Given he's only got 1 blue mana, it's very unlikely he'll be able to do anything about these blasts. Great. So we've made it through game 1. That was a challenging game to navigate through. Playing blue-black control is always challenging to navigate through. Trying to figure out which removal spells to play around, trying to figure out how to beat Gurmag Angler, which is always really tough. And that was that was no exception. So our sideboarding plan is pretty simple. We've got 5 cards to bring in here. We are going to be bringing Dispel with 3 Pyroblasts and a Relic of Progenitus. I generally take out 2 Galvanic Blasts, 1 Springleaf Drum, 1 Ichor Wellspring, and 1 Chromatic Star. So that's what our switch is going to be. The reason for taking out the 1 drum and the 1 star is that we don't need to be worrying about being lightning quick out of the blocks. They often have removal spells to stumble us anyways, so we want our density of threats to be higher, and we'd like our threats to resolve and stay on the battlefield when possible. The Relic of Progenitus is really good. It replaces kind of the star effect other than the mana producing aspect, as it's going to give us the chance to increase our artifact count for Affinity, as well as keep his graveyard under locks, trying to prevent Gurmag Angler from coming down, because often Gurmag Angler is the most important card in this matchup, so we don't have a good way to kill it. And then the Pyroblasts are just going to try to counter his counter spells and counter his Mull Drifters. So we'll bring those 5 in, and let's see how game number 2 goes. And looking at this hand, it's totally reasonable. We have 2 good threats that we'll be able to play on turns 2 and 3. So we will keep this hand. It's obviously a little bit land heavy, but there's not always a choice in this matter. Unfortunately, our opponent's mulliganed down to 5 cards, which will hopefully mitigate for the fact that we've kept a pretty land heavy hand. Oh, and he's down to 4 cards. That's really unfortunate. That's going to make it really, really difficult for him to be able to come back. So we're going to play Tree of Tales. Or actually, we should lead with Seat. Just it represents more things. Leading with Tree of Tales is usually kind of the last land that we want to play, unless you're playing a land destruction matchup. If there's a chance that they're going to try to destroy your lands, leading on Citadel is obviously correct. He's put 2 cards on top, so he's found some of the gas that he's looking for. And we've got a good turn 3 planned. I guess we can't quite play both Army Enforcers, unfortunately. It would have been nice if we'd been able to. Yep, we will be sacrificing. And we are not able to play this and Amir Enforcer, so we will just play our Amir Enforcer and see if we can get one of these threats to stick. And he's able to invoke a Mull Drifter here. Again, if he's going to get back into the game, he's now on parity with us for cards. Or cards drawn, cards seen. So we're going to need to kind of keep out in front here, which we're likely going to be able to do is we'll have 10 power on board this turn. 14 power on board this turn. This is one of those affinity draws that makes you happy that you're playing this deck. We are now kind of firmly out in front. What he's going to need is 2 Echoing Decays would beat us. He's going to need to disfigure this plus be able to make us discard another, or sacrifice another creature, which that's a good start if he's going to stay into this game. but his resources are going to be pretty tied up, and we're going to be able to deal a reasonable amount of damage before he's able to stabilize. He needs to have some removal here. So let's see what this turn looks like. He is absolutely going to have to remove at least one of our creatures right now, or else this game is basically going to be in the bag for us. Yeah, because now we've got lethal, plus we've got the battle rage. Good games, he says. Good game. Sorry. Sorry for the mull to 4. That's not a fun way to play Magic. Obviously, he would have preferred a more interactive game too than the one that we got. He says he doesn't know that Galvblast existed. Yeah, it's a heck of a card. And yes, mulls happen for sure. Alright, let's go for an attack here. Thank you. Alright, we kind of stopped that commentary at the end of that one. Okay, so that was the end of our round against stsung. Very unfortunate that our opponent had to mulligan to 5 there, or 4 there. That's just not the way that you want to see a match go. But I'd love to talk about the Affinity versus blue-black matchup. I'm under the impression that it's pretty favorable for Affinity, so I'd like to talk about what the game plan is in pre- and post-board situations to try to give yourself the best chance to come out on top. So pre-board, the key to victory is to flood the board quickly to get a number of creatures on so that their sacrifice effects and their removal spells are less efficient than the speed in which we can put out creatures. Flare Husk ends up being very important in the matchup because it eats one of those first removal spells. Ideally it eats one of their sacrifice effects, because them being able to make us sacrifice a Forger or a Mirror Enforcer or a Gearseeker Serpent in our ATOG, are some of our heavy hitters, is really scary for us. We also then want to be able to get some card advantage, keep moving our way through our deck. ATOG's a way to win the game quickly, but we can only really go all in on ATOG if they tap out, if they do something that makes it very clear that they can't do anything about us sacrificing cards to ATOG. And then Galvanic Blast is always interesting, whether you're saving it to go to the face or saving it to attack their Gurmag Angler. Gurmag Angler is one of the hardest cards for us to deal with in the format, given that 8 of our big threats and our medium threats just can't get through it without the aid of a Galvanic Blast. We can use a Flare Husk once it's died to go onto a Forger or a Mirror Enforcer to make it a 5/5 so it can rumble evenly. And Gearseeker Serpent does have the possibility of rumbling evenly, but they have Disfigure and Echoing Decay to be able to turn that combat poorly. And it's also always risky to start sacrificing artifacts to ATOG. If they go for a block, you start sacrificing artifacts, and then they just Doomblade you, and there's nothing you can do. Post-board, you saw that my sideboard plan was to bring in Relic, Dispel, and 3 Pyroblasts. Hopefully the reasoning for the cards that I brought in makes sense. Pyroblast counters blue spells. We want to be able to counter their counter spells, counter their Mull Drifter, counter their Hydroblasts that they're likely playing to kill our ATOG, so we want some protection for our threats. Dispel is our one way to be able to remove or to stop their black removal spells, and then Relic of Progenitus helps us keep Gurmag Angler off the board. It helps us get rid of cards for flashback, and slows down their game plan a little bit, which is important to us, and then cycles later. And then what we end up taking out are a couple of Galvanic Blasts, because they're not very good in the matchup in general. We take out 1 Star and 1 Springleaf Drum, because we're okay being a little bit slower in terms of getting going, and we don't end up losing too much in terms of consistency. So that's how we're generally going to play the blue-black matchup, and what our sideboarding plan is. And if you have any questions, you can post them in the comments, and I'll be happy to answer them. Thank you so much.